So question 13 says, find the real solutions, if any, using the quadratic formula. Now remember, this is a quadratic equation, and we could use factoring. And since there's not a GCF, I can't get rid of this 3 necessarily. So what I can do, if I wanted to use factoring, I could try the box method. So if I'm using the box method, remember the quadratic term goes in the top left. The constant goes in the bottom right. But since there's this leading coefficient, this 3's got to multiply to the 2 to create our big T. So we actually have to use this 6. And remember, we have to get this -5 here. So that's how we have 1 times 6, and we have 2 times 3, and then 3 times 2 would be it. So both of these look pretty good, but notice that to make this a -5 using 1 and 6, one of these has got to be negative. But remember, if you multiply positive times negative, that's not going to give you this positive 6. But notice how if you make this 2 and 3 both negative, a negative times a negative is going to give you this positive 6. And a -2 plus a -3 is going to give you this -5. So that actually is going to work for us. So I could then put a -2x here and a -3x here. Again, using the box method, we look for the GCF of these top 2 terms, and all I see in common is an x. So an x comes out. And then I just figure out the puzzle. What times x is 3x squared? That's got to be 3x. What times x is -2x? That's got to be a -2. X times -2 is -2x. What times 3x gives me -3x? That has to be a -1. And does a -1 times a -2 give me a +2? It does. So notice how this actually does factor into x minus 1 times 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. So notice how what makes this 0, you just move the 1 over their side, and that would just give you x equals 1. What makes this 0, you got to move the 2 over and then put the 3 underneath. That's going to be then 2/3. So that would be your 2 solutions using factoring. But they say use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula can be used if your equation looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So notice quadratic means second degree, and since this is a second degree equation, this is going to be called a quadratic equation. So the quadratic formula takes on this look. You can solve for x by taking the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So to do this, we have to identify what a is, what b is, and what c is. Well, the a is the coefficient in front of the x squared, so a is actually going to equal this 3. The b is the coefficient of x, so that's how it's going to actually be a -5. And then the c is the constant, which is the 2. So c is going to equal this 2. So to use the formula, all we have to do is substitute these values in for the correct letters. So here it says to take the opposite b. Well, since b is a -5, we have to take the opposite of -5, which is actually a +5, plus or minus then the square root of. And then b squared, since again, b is negative, you have to put that negative in parentheses on our calculator. So -5 squared. And then you're going to be subtracting then 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is 2. So I need to stand that a little bit. And then this is all going to be over 2 times a. And since a is 3, that's going to be 2 times 3, which actually is going to just be 6. So I'm going to do a little bit of math myself. So to do the quadratic formula, what we got to do is do what's inside the radical first. So this is called the discriminant. So in parentheses, we have this -5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2. That's going to give me a 1. So 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 6. And we then have to take the square root of 1. Well, what square gives you 1 would just be 1. So this turns into 5 plus or minus 1 over 6. So there's 2 problems here. One of them says 5 plus 1 over 6. 5 plus 1 is 6 over 6 would give you 1. I don't know why it said 0 there. That should be a 1. Bring that over. That's a 1. Good thing you kind of double check yourself sometimes. So when you bring a 1 over, that's not a 0. It's called a 0, but it's actually a 1 is the solution though. So the next thing I have to do is go 5 minus. So 5 minus 1 over 6. That's going to be 4 over 6. And notice that 4 and 6 both have a common factor of 2 in them. You can divide that 2 out. So that leaves you a 2 on the top, and 2 goes in 6 3 times. That leaves you 2/3. Again, you could put 4 6 into your calculator, or again, you could put 5 minus 1 over 6 in your calculator if you wanted to. So again, if I just type in 5 minus 1, hit enter, divided by 6, hit enter. Notice that's a decimal. The calculator wants, or the MATLAB wants in this situation, exact answers, and they want them as fractions. So if I hit math and turn that back into a fraction, that'll give me that 2/3. So that would be my 2 solutions to this problem. So that's going to be your solution set. So your solution set is going to be the 1 comma the 2/3.